going on, YouTube universe? Welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And it is that time of the week again, ladies and gentlemen, that time of the week that reminds me of all those conversations my ex-wife used to have with me and asking me whether I got my tips in or not yet. Before we get into round 16, round 15 needs some reflection, and from 7 games, I actually tipped 5, which could have very well and should have been 6 if I had tipped with my head and not my heart. As you can see on screen, we led with Fremantle. We tipped them by 17. They ended up winning by 9, so we had a margin of 8. Margin, like, tipping this year for myself has actually been pretty bang on, minus some of the big blowouts that we've seen. But we started the weekend off incredibly well. Fremantle's run and carry game in the end was way too hard for Geelong to stop. We then backed Hawthorn to defeat the Gold Coast at People's First Stadium. And I don't think Hawthorn had done that before, or if they had, it was very minimal and it's only a low-bearing kind of outcome. They looked the superior team from the get-go, which is quite surprising given the fact that statistically, when you break it down, if you go watch my round recap video, it speaks volumes. Gold Coast should have won this game by a large margin, but Hawthorn get away with the win. Adelaide, it was Shaw. They actually failed to lead at any point during the game. Melbourne had the lead at quarter time, half time, three-quarter time. Adelaide escaped with the win in the end. We backed GWS at home against Carlton. Maybe I'm not giving Carlton their just desserts. Maybe I'm being a little bit ignorant to them. Maybe. I don't know, because as it turns out, Josh Fraser might be king. Might be exactly who they've been looking for. 5 from 5 since he has taken over as interim coach, giving us our first incorrect tip for the round. We backed Collingwood against Port Adelaide, an outcome that I think had bearing due to the injuries that went down for Port, but Collingwood getting us another win is a huge win. I backed my boys Richmond against North Melbourne, and up until half-time, Richmond were neck deep in it, but in a game that has been touted by many, including myself, as one of the worst games of the year, if not one of the worst games in recent memory. One I would rather forget, North Melbourne picking up the win quite comfortably in the end. And the final game of the round, we tipped the Doggies over St Kilda, and the Doggies continue their streak against the Saints. So 5 out of 7, very commendable. But let's turn attention to the league overall and see how you tipsters went at home. Dan Prakash, Daniel P, has been supporting myself not just in the AFL world and what we do here with the Hip and Shoulder, but in my gaming, venture and journey as well. He's been supporting myself for a very long time, loves to reach out on social media and have a bit of a yarn when he can, and I can proudly say was the only tipster this past weekend that tipped the perfect 7 out of 7. So Daniel, congratulations to you, my good sir. Plenty of people following him tipped a near perfect round of 6. Then we had some 5s and we had some 4s as well. 3 out of 7 being our lowest tipped for the round. As you can see, I'm trying to dodge and weave around the camera to see what's going down. Total tips, however, Welsh Duke, Duncan P, another round where he holds down that number 1 spot, now taking the lead again by 2 tips, stemming the gap just a little bit. So Duncan, congratulations to you, sir, for another week on top. Our top 10 then rounds out with Master Tipper from PA, Skyvo, Big Kev Shendo, Team Wiggles, Evelyn May, Ron Schill, Some Cripple, Christopher W, and Jonesy making a bit of a climb. Congratulations to my top 10, and thank you to everybody else that is in my competition. I have dropped to 18th. We need to make some plays. I'm not far out of the realm of top 10. I'm 3 tips behind. That's a big gap to fill. Maybe we can make some moves in round 16. It kicks off tonight at the Gabba. Brisbane, Sydney, a mouth-watering matchup, and more so because of the ins for both teams. Ryan Lester returns for Brisbane, but Sydney bring in Peter Laddams to support Brodie Grundy, which is going to be interesting because I think Brodie Grundy would have got the better of Draper and Fort anyway, but bringing Laddams in to chop out, huge. Errol Goulden back in and Tom McCartan back in. Sydney are running at full tilt here. This is as strong a Sydney lineup as we have seen in a very long time, and don't underestimate the return of Ryan Lester. His output in that defensive 50 for Brisbane is absolutely huge. Having a look at the match history earlier this year, we did see a 44-point win at the SCG. Last year, we saw Sydney pip them at the line by 2, and then in 2025, we saw Brisbane pick up a 4-point win at the SCG. Interesting game. Two teams that are running on form. Brisbane obviously coming off of 2 wins in a row. Sydney have won their last 3. I am confident in backing Sydney here, and I'm going to take Sydney by... I'm not going to go as big as 30 points. I'm going to go 22 points. I just think Errol Goulden's run and carry on the outside is going to be huge. Players like Amadi and Curnow are going to be chomping at the bit to get the ball delivered to them by Errol Goulden inside 50. That just now means it allows Heaney to get off the chain a bit more as well. It takes the pressure off Heaney to have to do everything by himself. Brodie Grundy getting a chop out in the ruck is going to be huge. McCartan coming back to full back to lock down Logan Morris, huge as well. I think Sydney will get this one comfortably. Tomorrow night, Hawthorn GWS at the MCG. Very hard to back against Hawthorn here. I'm tempted as an outside chance to run with GWS, given the fact that Hawthorn are going to be running into this game with no Gunston, no Jarman Impey, Weddle out with injury, with suspension rather. Impey and Amon, I think, are the two that are potentially injured. I know Impey's the one that's definitely out. Amon is a 50-50, so there's injury crisis going on right now with some very key important players at Hawthorn. As you can see on screen with the match history, earlier this year, the Giants did them in by a comfortable margin, but prior to that, it was Hawthorn at NG and then Hawthorn at the MCG. It's going to be interesting because GWS are missing Jesse Hogan, but Jesse Hogan's been pretty arse this year, if we're being real, comparatively to previous years that we've seen him pop off. And Hawthorn just looked so incredible against the Gold Coast last week. Gold Coast dominated most stats, and yet Hawthorn still found a way, especially to win that clearance battle. And if we have players like Will Day and Jai Newcomb getting on top of the likes of Callahan and Oliver early in that centre clearance, in that stoppage, Hawthorn will go a long way to win this game. But GWS is an outside chance. I don't know. There could be an upset looming here. I just feel it. Saturday kicks off at Marvel Stadium with Carlton hosting West Coast. And while I would love to say West Coast have room for upset here, history just tells the tale. We have Carlton winning their last 3 outings, all of which have been by comfortable margins. Carlton are yet to drop a game under Josh Fraser as interim coach. However, their next 2, they play West Coast here, they play Richmond next week. The diehard Richmond fan within me says that Richmond are a dead set chance to beat Carlton, but the way Carlton are playing right now is probably a little bit undeniable. And that being said though, these are games that Carlton would go into comfortably thinking they could win. The last few wins they've had, they've kind of gone in as the underdog a little bit, and they've rose to the occasion, they've overcome. Do they drop the games that they're expected to win? That's the question. That's the Carlton we need to see answer those questions. I think Carlton do it. I think Carlton win this one by at least 27 points, but I am expecting a back and forth that is a hell of a lot better than these match histories indicate. I think West Coast will come to play to some degree. Collingwood versus Richmond. Very hard to see Richmond beating Collingwood here. I'm happy to see Richmond upset my balance here and actually get a win. But as you can see over the last few years, it has been Collingwood, and if it hasn't been comfortably and the margins have been a little bit closer, momentum has always been in Collingwood's favour. Collingwood need to win games like this if they're to keep any wildcard chance alive. I'm just feeling deep down, Richmond are due to upset a team. We've only won games where we were expected to be competitive. We've beaten Essendon and we've beaten West Coast. But they're due to upset a team that they should not beat. And Collingwood could be that team. I'm not sure. Could it be Carlton next week? Richmond just have to bounce back in a big way. We were very competitive against Brisbane 2 weeks ago. And then last week, a shadow and a shell of our former selves. I just want to see a competitive Richmond here, but I think Collingwood get it done on the back of Nick Dacos having at least 40 touches and kicking 2 goals. He's going to go huge. Port Adelaide rounds out the... Oh, it's not just Port Adelaide. Rounding out the Saturday night slot, we have the showdown. Port Adelaide versus Adelaide. Now, this is a showdown rematch because we have already had the showdown earlier this year in which we saw Berry kick a goal late for Port Adelaide to put them in front, and then Cook said, "Hold my beer," and slot the match winner. It was an absolute belter of a game. Two teams here running in different forms. We've got Port Adelaide who have dropped 4 of their last 5, and we've got Adelaide who have won 4 of their last 5. And as you can see on screen, we have had Adelaide win their last 3 outings, 2 of which have been incredibly close, less than a kick, but then we had an absolute thumping last year by 98 points. It was a horror show, that game, and I've got a feeling, even though their last outing came down to a kick, Adelaide win this game much more comfortably. They have Mark Keane back in defence. They should get Josh Worrell back in this week. So defensively, they're at their strongest that they've been all year. And their midfield's starting to click. Their forward line is starting to click. I think Adelaide, they turn around and go from a 1-point win earlier in the year. They win this game by at least 4 goals. 2 games on Sunday, the first of which is North Melbourne taking on Essendon. Hard to knock back North Melbourne in this slot, having won 2 of their last 5. Essendon, well, the last 2 of their last 5, rather. You see there, they've won 3 of their last 5. Essendon haven't won a game in a very long time, and it's hard to see, even though the match history here dictates that Essendon have beaten North Melbourne 2 of their last 3 outings. Hard to see Essendon getting up here, but then again, we've seen Essendon rock up and play some decent football in games that they have lost recently, so I don't know where we go here, but North Melbourne, ugly win against Richmond last week. I think they get the job done comfortably here. If they don't win this game by at least 30 points, there is something incredibly wrong. Final game of the round. Fremantle taking on the Gold Coast. And I've seen some people on social media, and it kind of blows my mind. They have said that if Fremantle doesn't beat Gold Coast here, put a line through them for the premiership. And I think that's absolutely wild, given how their game style is so far ahead of any other club. Sydney's the only other team that comes close to playing the same brand as Fremantle, and there's no coincidence that Fremantle and Sydney are the top 2 teams right now in the competition. Gold Coast, in the way that they've been able to have statistically better outings than their opposition, but they absolutely get smashed on the scoreboard, I think that's going to be a very similar case here. We've got a Gold Coast outfit that has the best quartet in the midfield in Petrarca, Anderson, Rowell, and Miller. I say it all the time. On paper, that's the best 4 midfielders collectively together that you could ask for at any one club, and they yet to have a game where all 4 fire on all cylinders. They might have 2 or 3 pop off, but they never have all 4 having a decent outing. Fremantle, on the other hand, team-orientated football, very hard to stop around stoppage. Their run and carry game is absolutely sublime. The only thing that stops them from winning this game is over handballing, which is what they did against Geelong last week. But I think Geelong would have been a tougher order than the Gold Coast is going to dish up. And history dictates here that Fremantle have had the better of them, minus a 1-point win last year against Fremantle, which was in the final, which saw Gold Coast win their first final. But Fremantle get redemption here. Fremantle win this game comfortably for mine. We have, as our tips for the week, Sydney, Hawthorn, Carlton, Collingwood, Adelaide, North Melbourne, and Fremantle. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today's video. Might shift some tips. I was going to say chips. Maybe I'm a little bit hungry. I don't know. But I might shift some tips dependent on ins and outs. I think some of these games have bearing to go the opposite way to what I've tipped depending on that particular outcome. So if that does go down, I'll change it. And then in the next update, the next tipping video we do, you'll see whether I've shifted or not. But that's it from me, guys. Do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button down below. If you've got anything you'd like to share football related, if you've got any ideas for, future videos I might make, just want to have a yarn, want to have a chat, you can always reach out to me on social media. Those links are in the description down below, or just leave a comment on this video and let's talk about it. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend, provided they're not sitting on the bye, which is the last bye of the fucking year. Thank Christ for that. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.